so we're recording there.
In the band, is the local the global?
I would say what we attempted to do in lyrically in this album is to sort of put a microscope on a very local or something that we were very familiar with, that we'd personally experienced. And when we did that, what we were trying to do is we were trying to get something that was interesting. And if there were influences that we were sort of looking towards, there were other bands that I would personally find interesting lyrically, such as The Fall or Half Man, Half Biscuit, or bands like that, where their lyrics could only be written by people who were in their shoes. So originally the plan was to make the lyrics interesting by focusing on the specific or on the local. And it just sort of seemed to work that the stories that we were telling would resonate, or they seemed to resonate. That was the feedback that we got from other people who'd lived in not only other small towns in Ireland, but in cities and in other countries. And a lot of people in Britain felt that the album or the lyrics spoke to them in some way. And I think it was inevitable, because really what we're doing, or what I was doing when I was writing most of the lyrics, is I was trying to put myself into my shoes from my youth. So I was really sort of looking at this through somebody else's eyes, because I'm no longer the person that I was when I was 13 or 14 or 15 years old. And I suppose that probably helped it take on that global perspective, but it really sort of happened more by happy accident than by plan. The plan really wasn't there. When we sat down to write this or to make up these songs, the plan was really to put together a series of songs and create an album. And I think fairly quickly we realized that we didn't really have the tools to write a conventional album. We're not the greatest of musicians. I'm not the greatest singer. And there's plenty of other people out there writing wonderful songs, and that's not what we were really trying to do. We were trying to tell stories that worked.
The performance of the songs is interesting in that you do sing, but you use a lot of spoken word as a way of delivering the lyrics.
I would say the spoken word thing arose from my lack. I hadn't really been involved in music for about 30 years, and I felt if you were trying to tell a story, singing in typical rock music, sort of 4 lines and a chorus and that kind of thing, it was quite constricting. And I suppose some people can do that really well. There are people who can do that, and they can tell a story in 4 lines that people get and people understand. And maybe it was my own shortcoming that I sort of felt that I wanted to go a little beyond that, and I wanted to tell a story. And I also wanted to sort of attempt to make them a little bit like short stories, where there was, you sort of set a scene and then something happens. And that was very difficult, and I'm sure a better songwriter could probably do that better than I could. But once we started on the spoken word thing, I actually liked the way it sounded, and I think it suited us, and we were able to sort of tap into the influences. I would say, if somebody would say, what are the influences of the songs? I'd point to, as I did earlier, The Fall, or Half Man, Half Biscuit, or Richmond Fontaine, or something like that. But there are other influences there too. And when you're singing about a small town in Cavan in the late 1970s or in the early 1980s, that material hasn't really been mined by conventional bands. So when you're looking for influences, when you're singing about that kind of stuff, you're also looking at people who aren't involved in music. And I think if we were to sort of say who influenced us, there would be that sort of poetry of Patrick Kavanagh, and a lot of that sort of poetry that we did for the Leaving Cert that we didn't really appreciate at the time, and then sort of came back to. And that certainly had an impact on the spoken word piece. But I have to say some of it was because I didn't really know what I was doing.
The songs